in almost every 3D fighting game. When I first started playing, he was known for Tekken, DOA also, and he's one of the first pro players, top players I ever heard of, man. Welcome to the show. What's up, Tom?
Hey, thanks, GM, man. Thanks for having me, man.
No problem, man. So first of all, man, like I said before I started this, you was like one of the first top players I ever heard of. I remember I met Blood Red back then. That was around the Tekken 4 days. I think I was like 14 or something like that. It was during the Tekken Saibatsu days. And he was explaining to me about like tournaments like Evo, the Texas scene, and he mentioned your name, and he was like that how you taught most of the top players at the time, like Gym Master, all different types of people, the meta of Tekken 4 and how to play the game. Like he was like all like he was teaching people the Jin stuff, I believe Nina stuff too. He was just talking a lot of
hmm
different stuff about the different high level meta. So I wanna know, because back then it was kind of hard to get info. How was you able to figure all these things out?
So the thing about back then, because there wasn't online play, you had to have access to top players. Like there was no other way around it. So Tekken 4 was at the end of the arcade scene. Where PS2 was out, Tekken Tag had a lot of PS2 tournaments, and then here comes Tekken 4, and now we're back in the arcade because this is back. Most people, modern players, don't know this. Now we get the game at home, whatever. But back then, it would be out in the arcade for a year or two before we saw it on the console. So, arcade players always had a big advantage. Um, I actually bought the arcade machine. I had it one day before Castell, who ran Tekken Zaibatsu, Vic. I had it one day before him. I bought it at a distributor in Maryland, and they were going to deliver it the next day. So I was like, I'll just go up in a U-Haul, and I picked it up. And I built the cabinet. Came, we had to drill the holes in and everything like that.
Damn.
So I had it up and running that night. From there, because I have the arcade machine, in an era in which you have to pay for your games, and you're not going to see it on the console for a year or two, a lot of players came to play with me because it was free games. So on the East Coast, you had like Chie and Fets. People on the East Coast would know who these guys were back in the day. Like they won the Philly regionals. They both went to nationals.
Oh, wow.
Um, Jop, Tran, huge names. They all came to play. And some of these players would live with me for a considerable amount of time, and we would just train constantly. And Tekken 4 was weird because the Tekken scene became really big in Tag 1. For those that don't know, Tag 1 is the first time the Tekken world actually was exposed to Korea. So they had like the nationals and things like that. So in nationals, MIC, Mike Nappy, and Alex Valle were the two finalists. And other countries came, and the Korean representative was Suk Dun Min. And Jang Ik Soo, who people would realize back in the day, that was like the god of gods, right? Him and Young Park. They couldn't come over here. So here's Suk, who comes over here, and he's like, man, those two, like, they destroy me. And he destroyed us. We had never seen light dashing, crazy step. It was like, right? So all of this stuff is being learned in Tekken. And instead of the legacy carrying over, boom, Tekken 4 comes out. And it's like, well, all that stuff out the window,
Yep.
right? Brand new. And while Tekken 4, people act like what was Harada smoking, right? When that game came out. But the truth is, with players so Zaibatsu, they put a poll up. Like, what do you want to see in the next Tekken? And ironically, what won the poll was a backdash stumble to stop people from backdashing. And it's like, be careful what you wish for. Because now
Yeah.
you're just kind of nose to nose, jabs, circling. There was no crush system. So that's what we got with Tekken 4. So I want to say, because it removed all of the legacy of Tekken, you had an influx of new players coming in, right? Because now it doesn't matter how nice you are with the Mishimas, right? Godfist only launches on counter hit, right? Not the same anymore. Uh, and Tekken didn't even play like Tekken anymore. It was its own. So for me, it was easier for me because I didn't have to overcome a barrier of like, wow, all this legacy knowledge I didn't know. So it was much easier for me to get into Tekken 4. Uh, we learned it just by like playing it. It was all trial and error, man. Like all of it was trial and error. Um, there was just no way to get information. Like the Zaibatsu was, yeah, and even like match videos. Like back then, there was no YouTube, so
Yeah.
to get match videos, the tournament was held on a. You plug the system into the VCR. They would record all the matches. Then somebody would splice each match individually and upload it on these massive file sizes, and that's the only way you got to see what was going on.
I remember that.
So
Yeah.
that's really how we learn. But different areas play different. You know what I'm saying? So like we would play over here, and a lot of it was influenced with how the style was in Atlanta. You know, Clint the Beast, Jop, Tran, all those people. But then you go to the Texas area, you got Jin Kid and Eddie Pistons. Over in California, you had Tom Hilfiger. And like here's the real truth. So Tom Hilfiger, when he was kind of beating everybody with Nina,
Yeah.
we actually figured out how to beat that with the Hayashida step, and we figured out how to make sure the scraper was always going to hit it. Because Tekken 4 was very low damaging. The only main source of damage was the laser scraper.
Yeah.
So it was just trial and error, you know, and we had to travel to different areas to learn. That was kind of back in the day where like, you know, everything, or like, you know, Sang, he played Lee, and even though Lee was all sidestep 1, 2, 4, 4, etc., everybody had their own little, even a game like Tekken 4, which was very linear how it was played, there was still some kind of freedom in it. So we had to learn like how this guy played, or that guy played, or that area played, you know. Jin in Colorado with WG Tribal wasn't the same as Jin with Jin Kid, wasn't the same as Jin with Tran, you know. So we just had to travel a lot. It was so expensive. If you didn't live in Cali or New York, you were going to spend so much money to train, you know, to get good at fighting games back then, because you had to travel constantly.
I was gonna say too. I was gonna ask it. I remember around that time, Tekken Tag 1 and Tekken 4 were played in tournaments at the same time, and I remember there was a group of Tag 1 players that just hated Tekken 4, so they just stuck with Tag 1. So I think is that the reason why Tekken 4 and Tag 1 were both featured as main games separately? Because I think that's the first time they've ever done that with Tekken. In other Tekken games, they just stick to the new main game, but around that time, Tekken 4 and Tag 1 were both Evo games and both featured as main games at like every major.
Well, they were different. They were so different, and you had players like Slips. You know, God bless him. We love you, Slips, man. You
Rest in
know,
peace, man.
Unconquerable, who was also a very good tag player, and then you still had like people from overseas. That's when Kim Bog Min came over. So before Evo, originally, tournaments were segregated, meaning people don't know this. If you were a 2D player, like this is why the Mortal Kombat scene doesn't understand why they don't work. The Tekken scene, if they wanted to hold tournaments, they got to hold it themselves, right?
Yeah.
Even when you were playing, when you were starting Tekken 5, me and Jin Master would hold tournaments at a mall, and it was only for Tekken, right? You know what I'm saying? So 2D games, they had their own tournaments. 3D games, they had their own tournaments, and very rarely did they kind of cross over, you know. So their scenes built each other up. They built their own scene, which is why they can survive and MK can't, because they've always piggybacked off every other scene. When in Tekken, you had like Electric Cancel and TIT, Tekken in Texas. Those were like the really big like Tekken tournaments. In Electric Cancel, they started holding Tekken Tag, and over the Extravaganza, the E-Tournament series over in the Midwest, they would hold Tag, because in the Midwest you had like STL Bad Boy, Slips, Unconquerable, a very strong presence over there. Over in California, you still had players that wanted to play as well. Then you had people that would come over for other games, like Ryan Hart, the great Ryan Hart.
Yeah,
he would still play Tag, right? And there was still interest in that. And this was the first time in history that I can remember that it was like JOP was in America by far in Tag 1 the best Tag 1 player. Like during Tag 1, they had to bring over Jang Soo-won, the double ogre player from Korea, and Jop still put him in losers. Now, putting a Korean in losers in Tag 1 is not like doing it today.
Yeah.
To beat a Korean in Tag 1, that's probably the hardest thing to do. more so than in 4 and everything else.
Yeah.
But they both were kind of held at the same time because they were just so different, and you still had so many players who, again, they had that, like Ryan Hart, great in Tekken 3 and Tag 1, and that legacy could transfer. 4 was kind of like, you know what I mean? So a lot of these players could play other games and still pick up Tag 1 and their fundamentals carry over. So
Yeah.
Tag 1 was held, you know, it wasn't held for the first year or so. But after 1 or 2 years of Tekken 4, like, there are a lot of players who, like, look, I played it for a year or two, gave it a shot, I don't like it, and then Tag came back in. And then it was being held at Evo, and it was also being held at the Electric Cancel tournaments. That's why Tag came back into it.
Oh, that makes sense. I always wonder what was that case because I remember when I first met Blood Red, he would talk about Tag 1 Evo and Tekken 4 Evo. And I was kind of confused because I was new to the game. So I was wondering, I'm like, what the hell is the main game? Like, which one should I focus on, right? But around that time, Tekken 4 was kind of hard to get into, honestly, because I think when I was starting to get into it, I think Tekken 5 was about to come out. I don't know if you noticed on
You're a
Saibatsu.
Heihachi player, right?
What's up?
You're a Heihachi player.
Yeah, I played
originally,
Heihachi
right?
for a minute. Yeah, I was trying to learn him and stuff, but he was a bit hard to play. So, doing Tekken 5, I was kind of just like trying to find what character to play. Talking about Tekken 5, I don't know if you noticed. You probably noticed because you was in Saibatsu. Before Tekken 5 came out, that's when Mortal Kombat Deception came out, and like that was like the only fighting game on PS2 that had online play. So almost
First one.
every Tekken player was playing that game. I don't know if you remember on Saibatsu, everybody changed their Tekken avatars to Mortal Kombat characters.
Yeah, so I always talk about this with people when it comes to first. Let me just give Tekken Tag its props here. First of all, Tekken Tag is one of the earliest examples of frame data. It was
Yeah,
99 when frame data was put on Zaibatsu, and people were not familiar with frame data at the time. And then in just the span of a year, everybody was it was all frame data driven, right? From Tag to the end of Tag 1 into 4. And Tag was one of the earliest games I can think of that had a national kind of tournament into a world tournament. Was Tag 1. And the Tekken world went from this big into massive,
yeah,
absolutely massive. For Mortal Kombat, the first maybe almost a year of Deadly Alliance, maybe half a year of Deadly Alliance tournaments, like I got into it, I was hardcore into it. Tournaments were really small. Mortal Kombat players didn't have their own community. Mortal Kombat 4 had been dead for 3 years.
wow,
The old school art community didn't want to get into the 3D, and there was no competitive Mortal Kombat community. So there's really no one to learn from.
yeah,
So the only community that would get into it is MK Deadly Alliance was actually a competitive game. It's not like Deception where you need like a referee there to be like, what are the rules, whatever. A game has to have its own rules to be put in tournament. And if you can't go by the game, the only thing I can remember is the Steve 311 and 5 where they banned it at Evo.
Yeah.
But all they did is give you the free hit, so it was still 90%.
Yeah.
A game can't have a laundry list of rules, you know what I'm saying, to be in tournament. So you had like Jop, Tran, Clint the Beast, UMC, OSMC Ogre, Mick, RTD. These are like Evo level tournament players. And because these guys were able to get into the game, then I was really able to like learn, because now it was piggybacking off of the 3D community. So you would tournaments that would hold Soul Calibur 2, Tekken 4, and MK Deadly Alliance. And that's when MK Deadly Alliance went from 10-man tournaments to tournaments closer to Tekken's numbers, and it was considerably bigger.
oh wow,
And that's how the last year or so of Deadly Alliance ran. It's when it became an actual legitimate tournament game, but still had to piggyback off the Tekken community because the MK community just didn't understand. And then when the Tekken Zaibatsu forums was where all the competitive Deadly Alliance talk was, not on the MK sites.
yeah, I remember.
When Deception came out, Deception came out at an in-between period. Everybody was waiting for DOA 2U, they were waiting for Soul Calibur 3, and they were waiting for Tekken 5. So you have these elite level Evo championship players joining a Mortal Kombat community that had no clue about high-level gaming. And like they're beating the stuffing out of these Mortal Kombat players, because like high-level players, they're playing the best characters, abusing the best tactics, and all the top ranks were me and other Tekken players. All that's it. And then when Tekken 5 came out and Soul Calibur 3 came out and DOA 2U came out, they all left, and the MK community grew into its own online scene from there. But MK Deception came out right at that in-between point where everybody's next game was like 2 months away. So they all picked up MK Deception for 2 months.
Yeah, I remember, man, this dude Justin Wong was going ham on people with a noob smoke when Deception first came out online.
So Justin Wong, here's a true story. Justin Wong was actually at my house the day it was released. He was seeing a girl in the Southern Virginia area, and I lived in the Richmond area, so he stopped here, and then he went on to meet her like the next day. And Justin Wong actually found I found the free throws, and he found the OTG with Baraicho that you could. And so literally, I've always said I've always been blessed. This is why I'm always good with sparring partners, because I understand that when you have people that are better than you, you should be thankful and not salty about it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Losing is a good thing. It used to be when you want to lose is when you're in your living room for free, right?
Yeah.
People who are not tournament players, they maybe get all butthurt about losing. But when you're a tournament player, you're like, hey, man, if I'm going to lose, let it be for free so that I don't lose what I got to pay.
Exactly.
So I've been very fortunate to have players far better than myself around. And so within day one of the game, I found out the most dominant stuff on the first day. So it was just like crushing people. And this was back in the day, mind you, before crossplay, where people were kind of split. Who has the game on Xbox? Who had the game on PlayStation? And playing on the Xbox pad was abysmal.
Yeah.
So I remember I tried to play someone on an Xbox pad. He thought he was mad nice, and I wasn't even playing Baraicho, and he was like, "Yeah, I beat Tom easily, but whatever, man." And people didn't even kind of cross over. I think MK Deception was the first of that, where you had a fighting game on two consoles, because Tekken was PS2, PlayStation only, right?
Yeah.
DOA was Xbox only. Mortal Kombat was on both of them, so you had who's on the Xbox, who's on the PlayStation. So it was kind of weird like that. They didn't really cross over.
Yeah, because there was no crossplay neither. I remember I used to play that game on the PS2, and then later on they came out with a GameCube version that had Goro and Shao Kahn.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they balanced the game a little bit, right? The GameCube one is a little bit more balanced.
They tried to. The weird thing about Deception is, whenever people talk about if they make a 3D collection, will it be good? Deception will be horrible because Deception is not made to be played offline. So in order to make the netcode feel smooth, because it did feel smooth when you were online.
Yeah, it did, yeah.
They would just remove the move properties would change. So, for example, Gyro has the launcher that is +2 online, but offline it's -30. You would have combos that are only possible online, frame data, moves that are safe online. The game becomes unplayable offline because everything is death. So it was the first time I've seen an offline game made for online based on how they changed all the properties. It was I don't think I've ever seen a game do that before.
That's weird too, cause like what you said, when I used to play that, I used to feel like that game had like the best online. It felt so crispy for some reason.
Mm-hmm.
And
That's because they changed the move properties.
Oh, that's why. Yeah, because I'm like, when Tekken 5 Dark Resurrection came out on PS3 and you could play online, that joint was terrible, and then Tekken 6 was horrible. And I'm like, how can an old Mortal Kombat game feel better online than Tekken 6 and DR?
That's how they changed the properties of everything.
That makes sense.
So
that's smart.
You can remove frames of animation. Right? It speeds things up, I guess. So.
That makes perfect sense. So I was gonna ask something else about. I was gonna go back to Tekken 4. I remember like half the stages were banned in that game, and I always wondered, how did people figure out what stages to ban? I know certain stages had like specific infinites. I could be wrong, but I thought I think the only stage that was allowed in tournament was like the arena stage, right? Or was there more than one stage?
So there were 3 versions of Tekken 4: A, B, and C. And I believe in A and B, there were these jab infinites if you were launched. So, for example, the parking lot, this spot between the one post and the car in that one corner. If you were to launch somebody, you could just do jab, 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 and if it's an infinite. And a few stages had that. That was and I believe the console version was based off version B, not version C. So because of that, originally in the arcade, the arena rule was born before version C. Because, so, yeah, I mean, I don't really know how many arcades got the upgrade to version C, so they just made the arena rule. That and the uneven, terrain, people didn't like that. It caused some weird things to happen as well, but it was mainly because of those infinites. But of course, then the arena, I mean, there are so many different ways to do that. There are characters like Lee. Lee was probably one of the easiest to take you around the arena.
Yeah, the one too, yeah.
Lee could also, I remember, what was it? Hop over somebody beginning of the round, down one in a blaze kick, and now they're face forward. Misstep them all the way to the wall, end with Hitman 1-1-1, and there's no tech roll face to the wall. So there's no wall tech if you're face first or sideways. So characters like Jin and Lee were two of the best at taking you around the entire wall. Jin, scraper, sidestep 1-2-4, side wall splat -1, -1, -1-2-4, etc. That's why the arena rule was originally made. But the problem was it made characters super powered, because of that wall. First of all, the laser scraper, Jin, who is probably the most commonly picked character in that game, the laser scraper, if you're right shoulder to the wall, you can't sidestep right.
Yeah.
Right? So we can do all three hits, and if you try to sidestep, you go the other way, you're going to get launched. But if you stand there and block, he's making you guess between the shortest possible just frame or all three hits. So if you sidestep, you think it's going to be a just frame, and he pulls the trigger with no just frame, you get launched. If you stand there and he does the fastest possible just frame, you get launched. So it turns into like this stupid, you know what I mean? Like guessing game that shouldn't ever exist. Also, there were certain attacks that if Jin low parries based on what shoulder to your wall, he then gets a scraper. Like I think it's a 1 or a 4, he gets a scraper in open space, but if it's a 2 or a 3, he gets, if you're a low parry, a certain shoulder to the wall, he gets a scraper. So it made characters like Jin better, Nina better, characters that didn't need to be any better. You know what I'm saying? Like, he's already going to beat these characters anyway, and then you put him in the arena. It did help Mishima's out a lot, though, giving him that wall game, which was very good. It also helped Paul. But at the end of the game's life, then people were like, well, this, like, if you're like a Julia player or someone like that, you do not want to be in the arena.
Yeah.
So at the end, I believe, like the last Electric Cancel, they did random stage. So at the end of the game, the player has a choice. If both don't agree to the arena rule, then it's a random stage. If one person wants random stage, it's random stage. But originally, that's why the arena rule was made, because of, those infinites.
I remember too, Paul and Heihachi had that down one infinite. I think it was in the parking lot, the down one, the chop.
It was in the laboratory, because you had the uneven, you had the wall, right? And then but the wall was on the slope going up.
Okay,
so those down ones are going to hit grounded. And actually, it wasn't an infinite. It's only even if you're trying to get up. So you have to just take one or two of them and roll, and then take another one and roll. But you had to take 3 or 4 of them kind of free before you could get out.
That's crazy. Yeah, I thought it was an infinite back then. I was told wrong. That's crazy. I was thinking
and
about,
you would have certain moves that would totally miss. Like Paul's, you'd be grounded. He would do sidestep 3, but if Paul's up here and you're down here, like on the jungle stage, it would miss, even though you're on the ground. But then reverse it. He's hitting you with, like, he's down here and you're up here. He's doing like Iron Mountains, hitting you grounded. So like, it had some weird stuff.
That's the thing with that game that I tell like a lot of new gen people don't understand how rough and hard the Tekken games were back then. That game had no crush system, so if you was playing against Steve, 1-2 and flicker, you just have to do this. You couldn't high crush, you couldn't do nothing.
1-2-1. Steve's, what is his back one? Back then it was his down one. Massive 40% damage for a counter hit. And Steve was a counter hit character, but you couldn't go under him, so you had to go through him. And Steve is built so that you can't go through him.
Yeah.
So Steve was devastating. It was kind of weird where Steve was so dominant against the top tiers, but then you had like the oddball characters that would fight him well, like Ling and things like that. Jin would massacre the mid tier on down, like massacre them. So it was, it's one of those weird games.
I always wondered too, because Red always told me that he played you. How did that go when he played you, Lei versus Jin?
Red, he got his revenge in Tekken 5. I didn't play. It was my first time playing it, and Jin Master was like, "Hey, let's go to regionals." I was like, "I don't know how to play." And then I get Blood Red, and Blood Red took his frustrations of Jin out on me. Blood Red hated Jin. Hated Jin. Originally, Blood Red thought, "Oh yeah, Lei can beat Jin, whatever, whatever." But then I think Blood Red tried and tried and tried to beat, not just me, of Jin after Jin after Jin, and he was just like, "Man, fuck this game." Like after a while. In fact, Clint the Beast, same thing. There was a moment in time in tournament when Clint the Beast, he literally gave up in the finals. He got hit by one scraper too many. He gave it up and he said, "That's the last scraper I'll ever be hit with." And he never played the game again. He never played it again. Yeah. That.
Oh my god.
Which is why in Tekken, which is why when they made, the Tekken 4 version of Jin, which is why he was bad for so long. It was like the laser scraper, why he was so good, they couldn't give that back to them. So it took a few years for them to figure out how to make him competitive without the laser scraper.
Yeah, because they kept nerfing Jin after that. In Tekken 5, he was kind of like whatever. In Tekken 6, he was weak. Tekken 7 was the first time in a long time that he became strong again. Well, in Tag 2, he was pretty good too. But, he wasn't like top tier in Tag 2. But it's kind of like Lee too. Like, Lee was so good in Tekken 4. After that, they just kept nerfing him. From Tekken 4 to Tekken 5,
Yeah. In Tekken 4, what made Jin... So originally in the beta, Horong had the parry. When they gave Jin the scraper and the parry, and the reason why Jin's jabs were so good, he has a 10 frame jab. I don't remember. Did they universalize everybody's jab at a certain point in Tekken? In a certain Tekken game?
Yeah, in Tekken 6, they made everybody's jab 10 frame.
Okay.
And Tekken 5, people used to have like 8 frame jabs. Slower characters had like 12 and stuff like that. It was all different.
Same with 4. So in 4, even if you have an 8 frame jabber, so say Jin does 1-2 or 2-1, and I believe 2-1 was +1.
Yeah, it was plus frames. That shit was OD.
But he's gonna sidestep and jab you again. So you're an 8 frame jabber, so you're like, well, I'll just sidestep and jab him. So Jin does like 2-1 or 1-2, and you say, I can't jab him with my 8 frame jab. He's going to sidestep, so I'll sidestep with him and jab him. Then he does 1-2 and scraper, which tracks sidestepping, and it's a counter hit scraper. You're launched. GG's. So it allowed Jin to even out jab 8 frame jabbers, which is why Steve was so good, because 1-2-1 hurt. 1-2 was a slap on the wrist to Jin. He doesn't care about that. Jin, the only real punishment Jin had, Lee, 2-hits of the scraper, he could sidestep 1-2-4-4 just frame. That was heavy punishment. So Jin would do what's called the fakie, where the slight charge, but not enough for just frame, and then release it, and it would hit the sidestep. But it was heavy punishment, right? Very heavy punishment. Jin didn't care about 1-2. So Steve with 1-2-1 and down 1, like those counter hits hurt.
Yeah.
Which is why it was tough for Jin to jab with Steve. Even with Lee, 1 sidestep 2, and sidestep 2 was so good not because it's sidestep, but because it considers Lee in crouch, which is why he was able to go under the jabs.
Oh wow. I didn't know that.
Yeah. So people thought it was because he sidestepped, but sidestep 2, when Lee goes under, it's considered in crouch. It was one of the only moves that I knew actually crushed anything in that game. Probably the only one that did. Maybe Steve's big launcher, but Yeah, those characters in that game, man. And people just by the end of Tekken 4, they just had enough with jab, sidestep 1, 2. They were just over it. So when Tekken 5 came out, it went back to Harada did he said one of the smartest things. He said even though this Tekken 4 sold 4 million units,
Wow.
which is great for
Yeah.
back then. You gotta say we're looking at the game came out in like 2001.
Yeah.
So that's phenomenal. If a game sells 4 or 5 million today, I mean MK1 sold 5 million in its first year and whatever, 6 million in its first 2 years, and people were like, "Hey, great!" Well, and it was still beating everything. And Tekken 4 sold 4 million, but Harada was like, despite the sales, I looked at the criticism. And he was like, even though the sales numbers, because Harada could have said, whatever, I don't care what you guys have to say. Look, money talks, right?
Yeah.
But he realized the feedback says one thing, but the sales say something else. So if I keep going down that route, I'll still have the bad feedback, but the sales won't be there next time. So that's when Tekken 5 went back to Legacy, and that's when the modern Tekken scene was really born. I mean, you had all the newer players from 4 who then had the learning curve, because they didn't, what is this? I'm used to 4.
Yeah.
And then you had all the older players coming back too. So it was like Tom Hilfiger came back, because he was done with 4. Like the last year of 4, he was like, I'm done. I'm not going to play, Also, in Tekken 4 is the first Tekken time USA was the best in the world. It was the best in the world. I mean, Nin never came over like Mad Dog did, but man, we would have beat him. We were just too cheap, man.
I heard Nee was OD
really,
too, but he never came over here, right?
No, we didn't hear about Nee really until Tekken 5. Tekken 5 is so in Tekken 4 we knew about Nin, Mad Dog, Junior Lime, and a few others, but again, no YouTube, etc. So we just couldn't get access.
Yeah.
In Tekken 5, they put the whole Korean national tournament up. Also, by the way, when Tekken 4 came out, it was a big deal in Korea at first, and then within like a week, so many of them quit. Like Young Park, Jang Ik-soo, because Jang Ik-soo quit Tekken to be a professional rollerblader because it didn't play like traditional Tekken, right? So a lot of them left. So you had Nin, Mad Dog Jin, a lot of new faces come around, but we only really knew about a few of them. Like we knew about the usual suspects, Main Street Ryu, Takayama, people like that in Japan as well. We knew about some of those guys, but really in 5, when the Korean national tournament was all up on YouTube, and we found out about Lidi and Lee Mario and Nee and Nin. And we knew about Mad Dog already. So many, and what was the other guy? Q-Dons.
Q-Dons, yeah.
Now, when Q-Dons came over here, American tournaments are some real shit, man. I always say, man, American tournaments, man, you get hardened in American tournaments, man. I used to always tell Gin Master, like, look, man, who cares if they're booing or oohing and eyeing when you whatever? I was like, because when you're bad, they don't care. They don't watch. They don't boo at all. They don't cheer. They just laugh at you.
Yeah.
When they boo you when you're on the road, they boo you because you're a real threat. So you got to love the boos. You know what I'm talking about. You've been to Cali back in the day when, East Coast and
West Coast, yeah.
In fact, in Tekken 6, people don't know this. Everyone was like, Cali, we flew out, help me, all this stuff. And then Fab went over there and beat everybody.
Yeah.
And that's when it was like, now we got to come to New York, and that kind of started that back up again. But in Tekken 5, to go back, it was so big. I mean, I remember Philly Regionals was the first time I played it. Like, I was busy playing DOA 2U and stuff like that, and Gin Master was like, hey, I'm going to go to Philly Regionals. And I'm like, well, I haven't played this game. But it was I think the finals were Gin Master and Hatman. In grand finals, Gin Master won. But there must have been like 200 people there. Damn. In University Pinball. I mean, and back then you didn't see anything like that. This is it was Tekken 5 was so big. It was so big. Um, it really started like Tekken on the course that it's on now. Like so many people came back into the game. Final round was massive because of it. Um, and that's where so many players really like Aurario. His dad used to own Aurario's arcade in Atlanta,
Oh wow.
which is where a lot of them used to play. I think that's where Tekken 4 regionals in Atlanta was held. Then Aurario moved to New York. Then it was Anakin, very young, during Tekken 4. I think 13 or something like that. They would always, I never met him back then, but they would always tell me about Anakin. Um, and then, Tekken 5, DR, that's when people like Spiro Jin in Tekken 5. That's when I first met Tekken. And you were around for this. Tekken 5 was mad weird because Tekken 5 was like really big. And then all of a sudden it went crashing down. And you were, I remember when I first saw you were playing Rai Rai. And I knew Lee wasn't that good. And I was like, yo, this dude's winning. Because back then in Tekken 5.0, there was a lot of bullshit in that game.
Yeah.
Right? And a lot of people were looking to try to get their bullshit off, whatever. And then I'm watching you play. I'm like, this dude's blocking? I'm like, nobody does that anymore. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah.
That was kind of the transition from defense to offense. You know what I mean? Like, everybody was all offense all the time. Trying to use 50-50 mix up. You know how people played that game,
Yeah.
It was all the way up and then went all the way down. You remember the MLG picked it up,
Yeah.
and you would get like 10 people showing up, So it went from like as big as it was to like nothing. And then of course we had 5.1, which came out on the arcade only, and then it was DR, and then DR, a lot of people were a lot happier with.
Yeah.
And then from DR we went to Tekken 6. But Tekken 5 is really like what modern Tekken is built off of.
Yeah, because I remember doing Tekken 5, man. There was a lot of people, especially China Fair used to have like over 100-man tournaments for Tekken 5, and people used to come from all over, like Florida, Cali. I remember Ricky Ortiz and Bronson showed up for a damn monthly. Like, it was pretty crazy. I was going to ask, too, when did Bronson get into Tekken? Because I think it was around 4, right? Did he won nationals for 4, right?
Yeah, so Bronson, his team, I believe, was Bruce and Armor King in Tekken Tag 1. Bronson, a very smart player. So he's living in a world of ogres and Mishimas. So his team was built for ogres, Mishimas, and with Bruce and Armor King in Tekken Tag. In Tekken 4, at Nationals early on, so I'm only going by the reports what people say. People say the sticks were the worst they've ever played on. Bronson won with Julia. A year later, that would have never happened. Too much Jin, too much. There was almost no Jin there, which just tells you this information today. If that game got released today, there'd be 100 million Jins.
Yeah, weird.
And early the first 2 years of Tekken 4, it was like, is Jin really the best? I don't. You know what I'm saying? Like, there were very few Jins, very few Steves, very few Ninas. Would not be the case today. Just shows information, especially at nationals. Julia winning, that just shows how slow information was to kind of spread back then, even though we had a forum. Bronson then moved on to Lee after that. And then he became a Lee player, very high level player, placed top 3 in many, many, many tournaments. And then in 4, I believe he was Nina, I think. Nina.
He played Nina for mad long, yeah.
Nina. So this is where the me coaching Jin Master stuff comes in. So in Tekken 4, I met Jin Master. I didn't know who Jin Master was. I remember he played in Michigan with Panther and people like that. He joined the Air Force, was stationed here in Virginia. So LOC, Locke.
Yeah, I know Locke, yeah.
Jin Master came here and he was beating him in Tekken 4. Now I was playing MKDA at the time. I hadn't played Tekken 4 in a few months. And he goes, man, Jin Master's here. He can't, beating everybody. So I'm like, there was a local Virginia tournament. So I'm like, he was like, hey, we need you to come down here, man. Like, we can't beat this guy. So I'm like, okay. So I went down to Southern Virginia, and I'm like, well, look, I'm not gonna. They're like, why don't you do the brackets? I'm like, where do I put Jin Master? I was like, I can't put him against myself. That's rigging the bracket at first
Yeah,
round.
word. Yeah,
So,
OD.
so first LOC was like, well, I'm starting to beat him a lot now. So I'm like, you want me to put him with on your side, man? You get some payback on him, and he's like, no, put him on your side. So I played Jin Master second round because first round went. That's how we were, man. It's so weird to be in an era now where people want to get fake top eights. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, word.
What's the easiest path there? You know what I mean? In our era, we didn't have pools. We didn't know who we played till we show up. So you had to be ready to play the best player there because it could
Yeah,
be you, right?
yeah,
So
exactly.
you had to be ready because the brackets was made on the spot. And back then, whatever. Okay, we'll play you first round. We don't care. Like it wasn't like today now where somebody good, put him down the line. So I would have played him first round, but to avoid being accused of rigging, I played him second round. Beat Gen Master. I remember I got all the way to grand finals. I forget Southern Virginia player I played. I remember he beat me one game, and I told him I was like, that shit was luck. If I play you in finals, it'll be 4-0, and it was 4-0.
Damn.
Like, and I remember I told him I was like, man, don't call me down here again, man. Handle your own business. But what happened was Gin Master then they were like, oh, he lives in Virginia. So Gin Master started hitting me up, and he was like, look, man, I want to get good, man. I want to learn. So that's when the dungeon was born. The reason why we call it the dungeon is Gin Master started driving up an hour every day. At first, I didn't take him seriously, but I'm like, yo, this dude is driving every day to get better,
Wow.
right? Like straight dedication, right?
Yeah, that's OD.
So he was, and I remember one day something was happening, and I was like, you know why you're not leveling up, man? You're too comfortable in this room. So I pulled the carpet out so he could sleep on the floor. So we called it the dungeon, right? I was like, this room's too comfortable for you, man. This is the problem, man. It's too nice for you here. You think this is a resort. So he was training constantly with me, and Gin Master started to become Nina was again OD in Tekken 4. So as Gin Master began to level up, like Jop would come down a lot, Tran would come down a lot. We're always playing with each other. And I remember when Gin Master went to Cali. Now people don't know Cali used to do some shady ass shit back in the tournament
Yeah, I
era.
heard
And
about it. Yeah, they were OD.
he went, so he went out there, and he beats, I forget who he beat. Then he beat Tom Hilfiger in the Nina mirror. And then they were like, "Oh, you weren't supposed to play Tom," so they took the win away. And Tran ended up beating him anyway. And then they gave it. They put him up against Ogre, and then he beat Ogre. And then they all placed top. That's the video where Mick was like, "We did it for the Godfather."
I remember
So
that.
back then, they used to call me that because a lot of people would come to my house to train, and like I would help my friends get to tournaments. Like I couldn't make it out to that tournament, so I helped them all go out there. Like we really wanted Jop to win. Jop, he was so dominant in Tag 1 that in Tekken 4 he wasn't winning these tournaments anymore. And most people will never know how good Jop was. Because they just don't understand. His level of skill at that time. And so we were all training. So for him to go out there and win it, we were all like training with him because we all wanted to see him win because we knew it meant a lot to him. And of course, we didn't want to see California win. And Mick went there to beat Eris and Soul Calibur. So it was a really, really big thing. So when Tekken 5 came out, Gin Master, whatever the reason is, he just didn't see certain things. So, and some of the adaptations were very easy to see.
Yeah.
So a lot of times he would be like, Bill, I need you to coach me. So, like I remember I think V Time, one of them, you were there, and if he lost the game to Bronson, he was like, "Where's the coach?" People would come get me. They're like, "He needs the coach."
I'm done.
One time when Josh Wong was beating him, he paid some player. I was like, I'm not driving up to Philly from Virginia. I'm not doing that. And so he paid somebody to pick me up and drive me there
Oh, that's crazy.
to coach him to beat Josh Wong.
Oh my god.
And some of the adaptations where I remember what Josh Wong was doing was Jin Master was working that back down forward 1-2 nonsense, right?
Yeah.
So Josh Wong would always back up. So if he pulled the trigger on the knee, which was a safe counter hit, it was whatever. And I'm like, I'm watching it, and I'm like, if you know he's gonna backdash, just down forward 1-2 and dash forward and do it again. He's giving you the offense. Eventually the wall's there, and then even like little gimmicks, like I'm like, okay, so you're up 2 rounds. This is the last round. He's going to do what every Steve does, that up one, put you in forced crouch.
Yeah.
Then he's going to sidestep to check you with back one. Wipe the floor. It's going to be a counter hit. You'll take 60%. It's the last round. He'll never recover. Like easy stuff to see. Like you just didn't, you know what I mean? Just didn't dawn on him, Tekken, you got to have the gimmicks there too. You know what I'm saying? Everyone, even at the highest level, everyone's got it, and Jin Master, he was an excellent player. He could execute it. He just couldn't come up with it. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So that's why anyone that says like coaching doesn't matter, I remember, and people don't know this, Jin Master was probably the only player that could beat Crow, because Jin Master beat him a lot. I remember at TIT, Jin Master put him in losers, and Crow was like, "Hey man, we're all friends here. You got to let him stand on his own, man. You can't coach him." Like coaching was, people don't realize how important coaching is in a fighting game.
Yeah.
I mean, coaching doesn't matter when you've got who the fuck is this guy coming out of the crowd? You know what I mean?
Yeah, because they do that a
when
lot
you have
now.
When you have an elite level player, and this is stuff PL talks about, like when you have an elite level player who notices something, and it's like the final game, and he's like, "Hey, da-da-da," right?
Yeah.
And then you get an edge in that you go up 1 or 2 rounds, right? And it's like you have someone else making the adaptation for the player, but the other player doesn't have his coach to make the adaptation back. You know what I mean? It's like coaching. People don't realize how big coaching is in tournament. There are plenty of examples where coaching is a big deal. Like, again, it doesn't. Coaching at mid and low level, whatever, like a lot of stuff is going to work, right? But at the highest possible level, where there's this much of a difference, if you're in the last game and somebody notices something and they go, "Hey man, I noticed this," right? That player would have no clue, right? And now all of a sudden he didn't adapt, or he didn't notice it. Somebody noticed it for him and came up and said, "Hey, yada yada yada." So at the highest level, coaching is a bigger deal, and Jin Master's kind of living proof of that, because probably history would be rewritten, Jin Master with a coach and without a coach.
I was gonna ask you about the whole coaching thing, because I don't know if you remember, like this whole year there was a big, like, people were just mad about coaching. I don't know if you noticed in the Tekken tournaments, dudes will come up on stage and coach for like 10 minutes before the match starts, and people were complaining because it'll be like one person's getting coached and this other guy just looking at them with no coaching, and then you notice the match will just switch completely and everything. So people were saying like, "Oh, you should only have a coach maybe for like 1 minute before the match, or both people should have a coach at the same time." So that was a big thing. Like, people just wanted to ban coaching completely.
I don't think coaching should be part of it, because fighting games are so weird. They want to make it out like it's an esport, but yet there's like no rules.
Yeah, word.
You know what I'm saying? Coaching makes a big difference. If people are in denial about it, it makes a big difference. Even as far as upsets go, you could have a mid-level player that's got a player better than him on their heels, and then some dude in the crowd who's a high-level player, his boy who they train with, can go up and go, like, you understand? Like, say I got somebody who's playing against some guy that I would destroy. Because styles make fights, right?
Yeah, they do, yeah.
And or vice versa, some guy that I would struggle with that somebody at high level would destroy. And we're playing, this guy's mid level, but he's in his bag. You know what I'm saying? And the player's frustrated, and the dude comes up and he goes, "Man, look, here's what I would do to beat this guy." Right?
Yeah. And
now, okay, I'll just do that. Done, right? So even it even destroys upsets from happening. Coaching is just something that is, people don't realize where it makes the difference. The FGC is kind of weird where it's in denial of so many things. The FGC doesn't believe skill sets matter in fighting games. literally there are certain fighting games that could literally patch, or not patch, but they could be made to remove certain skill sets. Oh, just do what this guy's doing. Okay, well, I can't do what that guy's doing. That's not on my skill set any more than this guy could do. You know what I mean? So they're in denial about that. They're in denial about coaching too. Coaching makes a huge difference. Nobody wants to admit it. That's kind of, well, he would have beat you anyway. Then if he would have beat me anyway, why did you need to coach up here for? PL has been one of the people that are outspoken because he understands how important coaching is. He's seen it firsthand with Gin Master. He understands like coaching matters to that degree. He's like, I'm playing somebody. This guy can't figure me out. All of a sudden, somebody else sees something, comes and says, hey, try this, right? And tries some gimmick that I don't know about. Then I got to figure it out on my own.
Yeah, it's OD.
You know what I'm saying? And PL's like, coaching matters. Coaching 1,000% matters. If it's gaming, fighting games want to decide when it's grassroots and when it's a profession, right? And it's never a profession. Let's not lie here, So the reality is, it just shouldn't be allowed. People spend their dog. People are travel to tournaments on their own money, not somebody else's money, right? And for someone to come up and coach, people don't realize what a big deal that is.
It's crazy you say that too, because like how the FGC wanted to be esports. Like I remember back in the day when you win a tournament, they would just give you the cash straight up. The last few years that I entered tournaments, they made me sign all different types of papers, all types of stuff. And then I would have to wait like 4 or 5 months for my prize. And I was like, bro, like, what the hell is this?
And when you ask, they act like you're a problem for asking for your money. People don't know about this.
Yeah, exactly.
There is a time in the mid-2000s where you would win a tournament and you're not seeing that money. Even MLGs, the MLGs for Tekken 6, not 5, 6.
Yeah.
You wouldn't see your money for like 4 months.
Yeah, word.
And people are like, yo, where's my money? And then they act like the player is a problem for asking for his money. They just, people will never understand how the FGC was. And, when it comes to players getting paid out and everything, they'll never understand. Like now, everything, I think the money comes a little fast. I think it's still slow though, isn't it?
Yeah, there's guys that's won tournaments I saw complain on Twitter, like Tekken players, that they didn't get their money in like a year or two.
It's always been that way, man. It's always been that way. And also, tournaments, hey, FGC is supposed to be esports. But man, tournaments are run like it's the first day of the FGC. To this day, tournaments are still like when I heard Sonic Fox complaining about the Mortal Kombat finale.
Oh, I heard about that.
Some of the things, and I understand if you want to boycott the finals, I got no problem with that. Whatever. That's I mean, if you get done dirty, then whatever. But when he said the seating was messed up, the staff handled situations wrong, the brackets weren't run smoothly. GM, you've been to a million tournaments. The seating is always messed up.
Always, yeah, because they don't know everybody.
The brackets have always taken forever.
Yep.
The original days of online tournaments, Doug, they would be 6 or 7 hour tournaments.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. I mean, people still don't know how to hold tournaments. So tournaments are always poorly held. Matter of fact, the reason why tournaments like CEO and things like that got their name is because when tournaments were always being handled like garbage, to have these tournaments pop up, that was like, wow, that was amazing. The first CEO I went to, I remember, even L.I. Joe, one of the ECTs, the one I won for Injustice, I was like, this tournament is one of the best tournaments I've ever seen ran. And it was rare. So people don't realize, dude, tournaments are rough. You don't get paid half the time. You got to fight for your money. Like it's rough as a fighting game player. And the lower you are on the totem pole, the more they push you off.
Yeah, man. That's what people don't understand, because we were spending mad money traveling everywhere, and then you have to wait mad long just to get your money. And like what you said, there'll be a lot of times you ask for your money, they think you in the wrong, and be like, why you kind of like, why you asking me for that, right?
Why you asking for the money? Yeah. You were there, and I'm curious. You were there. So Tekken 6 is when the sponsor era. So I saw that video you reacted to.
Yeah,
Why top fighting game players are always broke.
yeah,
And you were there when they called the sponsor era. So people for FGC history, people don't know. The arcade era was done. Fighting games were done. I mean, it was over. They just didn't transition well after the arcade era. And then Street Fighter, as big as it is now, Street Fighter was in the gutter. And then comes the mother of the modern FGC, Marvel versus Capcom 2.
yep,
And it gave birth to the modern FGC. Marvel had so many people into it that you could actually hold tournaments and make your money back for the venue.
yeah. So
So
many
you could
people.
hold tournaments. And it got to the point where you could then start piggybacking Street Fighter off of it, and which is where the B series came, Battle by the Bay, and they were making enough money to where they would fly out Japanese players like Boss, things like that, which really, but it was powered by MBC2. The turning point of the FGC is when Justin Wong over on the East Coast. So I remember I was there when he won his first tournament because I won T4 and Justin Wong won Marvel 2. Arturo was there, etc. And Justin Wong had leveled up from what he was to the Justin Wong. I remember Callie was kind of hating on him. I'm like, oh man, East Coast. That was back when his team was Cable, Cammy, another. That was his original team that he was dominating with. And they're like, oh, that was the Cable, Cammy, and he'll just plug in another, right? Oh, you don't know this, you know. So they sent. It was so hype. It really. So East Coast, West Coast was a big deal. In NBC1, East Coast had Eddie Lee, the GOAT, the God himself, you know. But it was a big rivalry. And then in Marvel 2, it was the West Coast for a while. You had Duck Doe. But then here comes Justin. So like they sent Ricky O over to 8 on the break. And man, the East Coast crowd was an East Coast crowd. You know, it was what it was. Justin Wong wins. Then there's what was in Texas? I forgot what it was. Valle loses to Justin Wong. So of course now there's only one thing left, right? You know, Duck Doe. That was huge. That's when the FGC, I think it was B3, and it was huge. The showdown finally between Justin Wong and Duck Doe. They meet in finals. Justin wins. Justin becomes the best player in the world, and Marvel is running. And he didn't lose again for like 7 years.
Yeah, he won like an Evo mad times on that for that game.
Yeah, I mean, and Marvel exploded. Like it was everywhere. Every local scene was powered by Marvel. Marvel. It was Marvel, and then you know a couple of other games. You know, everything was powered by Marvel. And then, of course, Marvel after year after year after year. Now here we are, 07, 08. It's losing its luster, right? The FGC is kind of going down again. That's why Street Fighter 4 is called the FGC Renaissance, and why we have players that were called back then 09ers, because that's how they got into the FGC.
Yeah.
Street Fighter 4 changed the balance of power from Marvel, which was the birth of the modern FGC, to the resurgence of the modern FGC on the back of Street Fighter 4.
Yep.
And then it was Street Fighter ever since. And that's where we kind of get the modern FGC now. And I remember the 09 era was the sponsorship era. Like that was because back then it was still all grassroots. Everything was I mean, you had a few things that weren't grassroots. So you had a couple of leagues. Any league that has ever touched the fighting game, upon touching said fighting game, goes immediately in the toilet.
Yep.
You know, fighting game is one of the worst things you can add to anything. So unfortunately,
Yeah, it sucks.
so
man.
you get it does, it really does. So you get you had like CGI and CGS for Dead or Alive. You also had WCG, which was having
WCG.
like for Tekken, DOA, etc. Right? And then MLG Tekken 5 wasn't really big, but Tekken 6, man, you had Tekken Crash, and that's when Korea was really coming over here.
Yeah, word.
You know, and then And MLG, like every like sponsor after sponsor, like who's your sponsor? Who's like Tekken players really thought they were going to be living the good life trying to get a sponsor.
Yeah.
But of course, people don't realize about the sponsorship era. A lot of them were shady,
Yep.
right? Oh yeah, I'll get your flight later, right? Just go ahead and pay for it. I'll get you, right? Or they fly you somewhere and there's no way to get you back,
Yeah, I
and then
remember
you're
that.
like,
Yeah.
and then you're like stuck there, right? So the sponsorship era was, and it was you weren't really getting paid salary.
Nope.
They were paying you like your flight stipend, flight back, entry fee. That was it,
Yep.
right? But everybody thought if you were a sponsored player, it was like being a pro. Like that video said, being a pro originally was, it's still always status.
Yeah.
That's how they get you. That's the currency of the FGC, right? Status, right? As a top player. And status is a form of currency. And so everyone was this, I'm a sponsored player. But then you started having these like second and third tier players that was sponsored. Like, everybody was getting a sponsor.
Yeah, everybody
you know what I'm
had a
saying?
shirt.
Like,
Yeah.
everybody had a shirt. Everybody had some sponsor. That kind of bled over into MK9 as well. Sponsor Tag 2, sponsor this, sponsor that, and none of them were really making any money. Even like at EG, like I don't think that they were paying like them big money over there.
All right.
Like
This is what I was told.
not the fighting game players. The fighting game players. Anyway.
This is what I was told. This is what I was told. They told me, like, because I used to hang out with all the Street Fighter players, especially during like the Tag 2 era that I was traveling a lot. This is what they told me. They told me, like, yo, like, the EG players. I said, yeah, they gain less money than somebody that works at McDonald's. I said, really? And he was talking about the top EG guys at the time for Street Fighter. He was saying that they wasn't really getting paid like that. They was getting paid like really bad, pretty bad. He told me a number, but I don't remember it. But it was pretty low what he told me, and I was actually really surprised.
Yeah, I mean, the thing about fighting games is, as you get older, like the FGC, for a long time has always said, "Oh, don't bring real life into it." But then you get older, real life brings itself into it.
Yeah,
right.
You have no
now that
choice.
you're older, you're like, hold up, man. What am I gonna do when I'm 70? How am I gonna survive? Right? I'm a fighting game player.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying? Like,
that's not gonna hold weight.
And people don't understand. Let me tell you how the FGC gets you. And people don't understand the reason. So very few people are tier 1 players ever.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? In their respective games. So the majority of people are casuals. They don't understand how people get hooked. So when people talk about money in fighting games, they're like, "Oh, of course there's none. Duh." Let me tell you how it happens. Say someone's 18 years old. Now, what people like to say is when they say, we all know there's no money in fighting games except for the 1%. That's what they say. Only the 1%. They're wrong. For the 0%. Or maybe 0.0001% of the 1%. So take the 1% and take 0.001% of them.
Yeah.
And maybe there might be some money in it for them, right? That's how small it is. But because most people are never in that, they don't understand. So let me tell you someone who's... So what it's said that only for the 1% is their opportunity. So say you're 18 years old and you say, you know what, I'm 18. They say, go for that dream, right? Believe in yourself. I believe if I work hard, I can be the best player in the world. Or one of them. So you train. 18, 19, 20 years old, right? You are one of the best in the world, right? Only when you get there, you realize there ain't no money here, right? And even when you start, it's like, oh, use your tournament wins to get exposure and stream and do YouTube videos. YouTube and streaming is not about fighting games. It's about entertainment.
Yeah, exactly.
Most fighting game players are horrible entertainers.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So the problem is they think my wins, there is no blueprint. My wins will translate into exposure. My exposure gets me watched on YouTube and Twitch. It doesn't. So why don't they just quit? Because as long as you're a top player, there'll be some sponsor that says, yo, I'll pay for your flight. I'll pay for this, right? But all you're doing is taking that money and rolling it to the next event and to the next event, chasing this opportunity that might come your way. So now you're 20, 21, 22, and you're like, I just got to get the right opportunity, right? 5, 6, 7, 8 years go by of you being able to do this because you're just rolling that money into the next and into the next, or sponsor here, there, then the next sponsor, play you here. But eventually you're 28, 29, and you're like, man, I've had like 4 sponsors, been paycheck to paycheck, I'm still a top player, but now 8, 9 years is gone, right? That's how it gets you. That's how they get you, because there's always, by the time you realize in the 1% you made nothing, right? 8 or 9 years goes by.
Yeah.
And then you're like, man, Pro League, and people always like to bring up Sonic Fox. Always. Because Sonic Fox is seen as, it's possible, look what happened to Sonic.
Yeah.
Well, all you can control is your skill. I practice. I can't control if people will find me entertaining. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I can't. I mean, I could try. You know what I mean? But I couldn't be a stand-up comedian, right? I just don't got. I don't got it like that. You know what I'm saying? Like, so I can't control if you're just not an entertaining person. If it's not in you, not everybody can be an entertainer. Not everybody can be an actor or whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
But you can control your skill, right? I trained. I'm good. I'm gonna win. The problem is that doesn't equal money. If I took Sonic Fox's almost 900,000 and broke it down since 2014 when they started listing his esports earnings, when he started winning money.
Yeah.
So it's 11 years, about to be 12. In 2026, it'll be less. So as of right now, with taxes, Sonic Fox comes to what would have averaged out to be 55 to 60,000 per year. And that's if you take all of his money and divide it by 11 and then take out what the taxes would be.
Yeah.
Right? So, I think it's like, because people, it's so weird. Like, you don't understand, most younger people, they don't understand money. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Unfortunately. So it's less than 900,000. It's like 850,000 or something like that. And then it's about to be now 12 years in 2026, right? So let's just take like 850,000 divided by 12. It comes to like 70,833, something like that. With taxes, you're looking between 55 and 60,000 a year. That's not no money, right? However, he had to be the best player alive to do that.
Yeah, it's OD.
That's terrible money.
Yeah.
That's terrible money. You know what I'm saying? That's terrible money for that. So how does Sonic survive? Sonic survives on his community. So I'm not going to get into the politics of that, because I don't care how somebody lives their life. You know what I'm saying?
Word, yeah, I feel
but that's his community, right?
Yeah.
Nike, him being a god, doesn't matter to Nike. But everything he stands for in his community, they said, we can get some value out of that.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Maybe that community will buy sneakers. Even the great Sonic Fox is a walking failure upwards by the numbers. And this is one of the best to ever do it. So let me again break it down to people. His tournament winnings for being the best of the best, between 55 and 65,000 a year. Let's say 60,000 for taxes. Not bad, but to be the best in the world for that, that's terrible money. Look, anything else, like a pro athlete, you're the best. He's like the equivalent of LeBron James, only look what he's making, right?
Yeah.
Because it's fighting games. Then he was sponsored by, let's look at Echo Fox, Rick Fox. He was their face. Where's Echo Fox now?
Yeah, done.
Tanked it. Sonic Fox also got some of his friends sponsored. In the ground. Having the great Fox didn't do anything for them. They just went under. E.g., I'm not saying though he tanked EG. EG's been around for a while, right?
Yeah.
But if he was making the money, they would still be here. And then there's, he had one more sponsor. Did nothing for them. Because they're done. And now he's with Nike. And Nike's going to lose money on him. Period. So even someone like Sonic is failing upwards. He is every fighting game player. This is nothing against Sonic. It's fighting games. Every fighting game player is the worst if you want to lose money, give a fighting game player a deal. Because the problem is, at least over here in the West, fighting game players can't generate any money.
Yeah, they can't, yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And people say, oh, well, YouTube and this and that. Again, it doesn't generate that way. So YouTube money for fighting games, just playing the game is not enough. You know, you got to do something that makes you entertaining on YouTube. YouTube is about entertainment, not watching you play a game. So I only brought up Sonic because people always use Sonic as the gold standard. If he can do it, so can you. Wrong. If you look at what he's doing, eventually sponsors are just going to stop giving money to fighting game players. You know, and he had to be Sonic Fox to be able to get the privilege of being paid for losing people money over and over and over and over again, right? And most people, they ain't Sonic. You know, I mean, there's no money in it. And people look at Street Fighter. Oh, look at the money in Street Fighter. Oh, the FGC also is so weird because, think about that. The money doesn't work out. So there's the Capcom Pro Tour.
And the EWC, most people nowadays, they just bring up EWC and be like, look at the money they're making. And, you know, there's finally money.
Here's what's wrong. EWC. So first of all, let's just look at the Pro Tour. The Capcom Pro Tour. $1 million.
Yeah.
If you are a good player for 364 days that year, but the best player on day 365 of the tournament, you made some bank. If you are the best player in the world for 364 days of the year, but only top 5 in the world on day 365, you're broke.
Yeah, that's OD. Yeah.
You have to be the best one day a year to make money that one day. Right? You could be the best every other day and you're making McDonald's money. Right?
Yeah, it's OD, man.
That's the payouts don't make any sense. Think about it. You go to a tournament, everybody's there. The killers of killers. Ah, man. Got 5th or 7th. Right? Okay. I'm going to train. I can beat these guys. You go to the next tournament. They're all there. You win. I leveled up. I'm the man. Do you get your 1 million? Nope. Here's a few $1,000s. Wait a minute. I had to train just as hard for this money as that money. And I don't even pay my rent on this?
Yeah. That's
the problem. The FGC is rent money for every tournament except for one tournament a year. It's not sustainable.
Yeah.
It's not sustainable. That's kind of the problem with fighting games, man. And people don't understand that because you're in the 1% really don't have a way to monetize it. That's kind of like the problem with, you know, and people still don't realize these tournaments make money off players. You've talked about this in the past. Think about the Evo model. You pay for your flight. You pay for your food. You pay for everything. And then they sell tickets to have people watch you. Let me get this straight. I pay to be in this arena, and then you charge people to watch me play. So I'm paying for everything, and you make all the money. Right? If you look at the Evo model, right? people that get 7th and 5th, they still made money off those people. Stream time, uh, they charge tickets for a separate day, stadium day, right? But most people in that stadium, they paid to be there to play.
Exactly.
So the FGC has been making a living off free. They use the grassroots model of free. The problem is there's no customers for the FGC except for its players, right? So its goal is to keep the players funding the FGC. So the players can't make any money because they're the customers. Right? So it's a model that just doesn't work, unfortunately. And I just don't see the FGC. More and more players are like, you know what? Maybe I might make some money with content. Maybe I won't. But I get to play the game. I get to make a little bit of change on the side. And I don't got to travel. Now, the best thing is once you make a name, never travel again. You win one tournament, right? Place top and beat a couple of big names one time. Never travel again. Go home, YouTube stream. Even if it doesn't work out, you'll still pay your rent every month just off that.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
Because you're not losing money. And the worst is commentators, they make out better than players.
Yep.
Because if a commentator goes to a major and he's paid, his flight is paid for, he has a stipend, his hotel's paid for. He leaves and he gets paid to be there. A lot of times somebody could get 5th and make out worse than the commentator. Because that person that got 5th, he had to pay for his flight. He had to pay for his hotel. He had to. It's stupid. The formula is, and the FGC can never grow because they're not really interested in even the best. Some people are great commentators. C4, love watching C4. Ketchup and Mustard are pretty good. James Chen's good. Yipes, etc. But sometimes you'd be like, yo, what is this? Because it's all about cheap labor. Hey, why do we want to pay for this guy when we could just bring this dude in? And he'll do it for, because what happens is status, right? I can't be a top player, but as a commentator, people know who I am, so I'll do it for peanuts.
Yeah, like I was gonna say that too. That's like when it comes to like when they used to have other streamers come to the event and stream the event. Now they took them out and it's now the official companies actually streaming the events. We don't got no more Spooky, no Beefoo Techie, none of that. It's straight Capcom streaming their own thing and Namco streaming their own thing now. So we don't need to pay these streamers no more. We just do our own thing.
Yeah, so it's tough to be a fighting game player now, man. It really is as far as term. I don't see tournaments of, I don't know how outside of, and I mean, even Saudis, I don't know. I look at all the money that's in Fatal Fury. And I look at the viewership and I go, nobody watches this.
Yeah.
Where's the money coming from?
Yeah, they fully funding SNK, man, and like no offense to SNK, man, but people don't really play their games outside of Japan and some Latin America companies, Asia, China, and stuff like that. So they fully getting funded by the Saudis or whatever, but I don't know how they making any revenue off of that company or the money they putting in.
The FGC worked because it was always any game you can think of, Marvel, the old Street Fighters, whatever. It was about. You love the game, but you just wanted to compete, right? Now I feel like developers make games worse than they've ever been, and the purpose isn't to enjoy the game or to compete in something as a hobby. It's to do it as a profession and make some money.
Exactly.
The problem is there's no money to be made. That's kind of the problem. I mean, Tekken. I mean, how's the Tekken scene? I mean, what's the pulse on the Tekken scene with T8? Or what do you think about T8, man?
Basically, Tekken 8, when Season 2 first came out, everybody hated the game. They boycotted the game a lot. I know you probably heard about it. And that kind of at first, a lot of people were playing it. And then a lot of people just stopped playing the game and they started boycotting it. They started hitting up developers. We hate this game. How can you do this? No balance patches. So the whole community was anti-Season 2. And that kind of dropped the player base a lot. Obviously, TWT is still going on. They do their little tournaments. They have all types of stuff like regionals, challengers, master events. But obviously, the only real money you're going to see is if you win the actual world final, which is going to be hard to get because you need to be top 20, top 15 in points, I think. Mm-hmm. And that's a lot of traveling throughout the whole year. So, they have the little circuit kind of like Capcom Cup. And then they have EWC. So, but that's pretty much EWC is pretty much the only thing. Because for Tekken World Tour, if I'm not mistaken, I think first place is like 60K, 50 to
Okay,
60K for the world final, and then of course
that's
the Saudis way more. The EWC is like I don't remember how much it is. So
I mean, but again, I don't hear people talking about. I hear people talking less about how much they love Tekken and more about the prizes.
yeah, exactly. People are more
You know what I'm
mostly
saying?
playing for the prizes. Nobody really loves the game. Everybody complains about the game. Most of the content that does come out for Tekken 8 is basically that this game is trash and I hate it. You know, there's a couple of, top creators like Main Man Sweet and stuff that they still make it. They make like kind of like positive type content, but overall, like the state of Tekken is mostly just everybody hates the game, and a lot of people are just like going to other games. It's kind of, it's basically just carried by the TWT final EWC, but at the end of the day, people don't really care about it too much because the viewership and all is just gone down. And the
Let
Harada
me ask
left
you,
too.
what
That's
is your
another thing
favorite
too.
Tekken game? What is your favorite Tekken game?
Mine, is between DR and I liked 6 a lot. But the reason why I liked 6 a lot was that was the first time I felt like being a pro was actually like worth it. Cause they had WCG, they had MOG. There was a tournament almost every week. I want to go to a local, I go 8 on the break. You know what I'm saying? I want to go to the Chinatown Monthly. That's right there. Virginia used to have tournaments 24/7 all the time. I could just go over there. We still had East Coast Throwdown, Defender North. We had so many tournaments, Summer Jam, Winter Brawl. So every week I was going somewhere. And then the arcade scene was still lit. If you remember, New York, besides Cali, we were the first people to have Tekken 6 in the arcade. So we
I
was
remember.
already like getting nice in Tekken 6 before it came out on console. So people used to call us like, "Oh, New York, they cheating," because they getting good at the game
Yeah.
before the game came out on console. So yeah, Tekken 6 was because of that, and then DR also because that was the first time I like started traveling a bit, and the arcades was so popping in DR, man, that it was just so fun to play. You know.
Yeah, the arcade scene, people don't remember what that was like. One of my favorite games of all time. In fact, if I could go back in time and drop everything and start a game from scratch, it would be Tekken 6. Tekken 6, I don't think people. One of my biggest regrets is not like be grinding to try to be like an Omega top player in that game because, first of all, I don't understand how people look at the stuff in Tekken 6 as a downside. The sidestepping, the movement in Tekken 6 to say, well, you should be able to backdash as well. Should be able like Tekken 7. I played Tekken 7 once, and Tekken 6 and Tekken Tag 2. You just sidestep constantly. I remember Help Me, because remember Help Me was Help Me, JDCR, and Saint was with the House of Goons with us for like a month, and they were staying with us for MLG Dallas. And I remember Help Me was like, I don't care if I get hit, I'll just sidestep anyway.
That was in
Like I
Tag
didn't,
2, right?
you, yeah, Tag 2.
Yeah.
Like they would get hit, they didn't care, sidestep anyway. And it's funny how so many, because we all know most players are casual, they're average players, right? They look at that as a problem, but able to do that at high level, it's not a problem. You know what I mean? It's like, it's a problem for you fighting players like that, right? But they're there because of how good they are and their skill and the time invested, so they're rewarded for it. I feel like Tekken, amongst other fighting games, so many other ones, are looking at it like, why should you be so heavily rewarded for putting so much more time in than me? And the equivalent I would look at it would be like a guitar, which takes a long time to learn at high level,
Yeah.
right? Obviously, like to be, well, if you've been playing for 20 years, why can't I be as good as you in a year? Like that's, you know what I mean? That's like how fighting games were turned into. Tekken 6, the sidestepping was great. The backdashing was great. And the characters were really fun, man. Like the characters were, I mean, you saw so many different characters used,
Yeah,
right?
that game was
Bruce,
balanced, bro. Like,
yeah,
that game
Bruce,
gets a lot of hate,
Bob.
bro. It gets a
It
lot of
does.
hate because of the Evo finals of Fab and Core. So everybody,
Yeah, 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 yeah,
all the
yeah.
casuals that watch that, they think every grand finals was Bob versus Bob when it wasn't. That was like the only
Yeah,
time that the grand finals was Bob versus Bob. Like if you looked at tournament results of that game, almost every character was played in tournament.
yeah. I remember that Evo MK9 was there. I remember when Rip beat Core. And I remember when they were playing in losers finals, Fab was like, "Man, please just have Rip beat him, man." Because Fab was like, "Rip, he plays crazy, but he's mad predictable." He's like, "Core don't care, man. He ignores everything, man. He don't care. He
Yeah.
just, yeah." Fab always hated playing Core, man. But yeah, in that game, I don't know why people look at it as not being balanced because it was. You look at the characters that were really strong: Bruce, Brian, Steve, Devil Jin, Bob. Like, you could go so many characters that are like extremely powerful characters. Lee was not like an omega powerful character, but with enough skill, he could compete against the very best characters in the game. You
Yeah.
know, Brian. It's you know what I mean. So like that's rare to see a game where so many characters up and down the tier lists were so competitive. And then Tag 2, what'd you think of Tag 2? I know it wasn't received very well by a lot of people. What'd you think of it?
Tag 2 was an interesting game for me because at first it was kind of lit, right? Because like it was a new game, there was a lot of tournaments for it. For me, it took me a little while to get into because I'm not a tag player. You feel me? Like I'm used to one-on-one
Mhm.
Tekken, so for me, it took me a while to figure out how to play this game. Um, I think a lot of people think that game killed off competitive Tekken, but I'm gonna just
Mhm.
be real with you, Tom. I think Tag 2 was the worst time to be a pro Tekken player. And the reason why that was, there was no sponsors
Mhm.
at all. It was the opposite of Tekken 6. There was no sponsors. MOG
Okay.
picked it up one time for the MOG Dallas, and that's it. And the prize money was extremely low. I remember I went to Crown Break and I won Crown Break, and they only gave me $300 for that thing. So that's a perfect example of how bad the payouts were for Tag 2. It was probably kind of just playing it for the love of the game. But yeah, man, that game competitively, it was fun. It was fun. It wasn't the most balanced game, but it was fun. But being pro and payout wise in that game, it was terrible. It was horrible.
Why do you think it was received so poorly?
Reason why, honestly, man, the game has too many damn characters. That's one. And two, it was really hard for somebody new to get into that game. You have to actually like really know how to play Tekken, and you will have to put in a lot of time into this game. There's too many matchups to learn. The tag system was extremely complicated for people also. The combos weren't simple in that game like other Tekken games. It was a lot, man. You really had to put in time, and a lot of people weren't willing to do that. Like people was like, this game is too crazy and chaotic, and it's too time consuming. So that's what killed the game off. That's why I think in Tekken 7 they made the game way much easier to play because people were too overwhelmed with Tag 2.
So was it the second? So Tekken Tag 2 Unlimited came out because even Harada thought like that having to learn that second character was turning a lot of people off.
Yeah.
So they made it so in the arcade you'd have. That's why they did that. Do you think it was having to learn that second character was just too overwhelming? You got to learn your whole first character, then you got to figure out how to work your second character in. I haven't even learned my first character yet.
Ex-
Is it kind of like that?
Yeah, it's kind of like that, and then you gotta learn if your character synergize, because not every character synergizes in that
Mm.
game. There's specialty teams like Wang and Jinpachi that work really well, or like Kazuya, Devil Jin, and stuff like that. But you have to also figure that out, and then you have to learn the tag system from scratch. And the tag system in Tag 2 is way different than Tag 1, because they introduced the tag crash, and then there's the
Mm.
rage, and then you could take out the recovery health if you do a tag crash. There was a lot of stuff to learn, so it was too overwhelming for people, man, to learn all of that. And a lot of people don't know, like how you said, the Tekken Tag 2 Unlimited, that was like the DR version of regular Tag 2, because regular Tag 2 was broken as shit. It was extremely broken. I'll give you an example of something that was nonsense in that game. You know Wang Jingray's Wang Moon, right? If Wang
Yep.
Jingray hit you with Wang Moon in Tag 2 Unlimited, you got a free tag in into a free launcher. So dudes used to do like Wang Moon, and then Lars will come in and do Arc Blast and get like a Half-Life combo.
Mm.
So things like that, they completely took that off, and they also reduced the amount of hits you get on a wall combo and air combos. And after the DR
Okay.
version came out.
Okay, I got you. 6 was like the 2 with before BR came out. Like six was, you got full bound off low parry.
Yeah,
She got
vanilla.
full combo. Yeah, that was dumb. Rage was even dumber. Bob down 4-2 launched on normal hit. His while standing 2-2 was completely safe, put you in force crouch, and was a launcher. Just
Yeah,
like dumb, you just stupid stuff. So you've been around since for a while because Tekken went through something weird. So you had six, where I feel like Tekken was received really, really well. A lot of people got turned off by some of the shenanigans in 5.0. With DR, when people leave, you don't always get them all back.
yeah,
So DR was a little smaller. But then 6 came out when BR came out in consoles. Man, it really exploded. Like everybody was watching Tekken Crash. Like I was one of them. We were all watching the Tekken Crash
yeah,
episodes, right? Rain came over here. I was watching that tournament. I was pulling for you, man. When he went Bob on you, I was like, man,
yeah, man.
I,
I
I still
hated that
can't believe
matchup,
you
man.
had him that one round. You tried to throw him. I was like, come on, GM, safe mid, man.
Yeah, it was
Like
too
I,
like, oh my god, like that's funny because like I always considered Bob, like if a Bob player plays like core, I think it's in Lee's favor because he's too aggressive, and Lee is really good for counter
Mhm.
hits. But if a Bob player plays like heavy defense, it's like horrible for Lee because Lee has a very hard time opening up turtles to begin with. And
Yeah.
then in Tekken 6, all of Lee's lows are launch punishable, and Bob had while standing 2-1. So,
Yeah. Stupid. Yeah.
and then his jab was too good. Lee had trouble with like really good, like dealing with like standing jab
Wasn't
a
it
lot.
14 frames? Right. Was while standing too,
Yeah, so he could launch all my
which
lows, and
was
then
and most launchers were 15 frames outside of Twin Pistons while standing 1-2, which was 11. Or was it 11 or 12? I don't remember. But I remember you had Kazuya, and then for Bob to have a 14 frame while standing 2 was massive.
yeah, and that used to cook Lee. And another thing too is that on top of that, Bob had down forward too, and having something like that is annoying for Lee to deal with because one in that game Lee had to pressure you with pokes. And then at the
Hmm.
same time, I had to fish for counter hits. So I'm always, while I'm pressuring you, I'm worried about, damn, I can't do anything too slow because I'm going to get hit with down forward 2. And then I got to worry about that lame ass sidestep 1+2, because Lee's pretty
Yeah.
linear with his pokes. And then I got to worry about,
Yeah.
very worry
Slice the
about
1+2.
poking
Yeah.
him because I don't want to eat a while staying launcher. But, he counter picked
Yeah.
me. It was smart. He counter picked me.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember watching that strong style. I remember watching that tournament, and it was I still don't know how Tongue Ball lost that. Tongue Ball. I mean, he had. There was no way Rain shouldn't have won that. I mean,
Yeah, I
his law
don't.
was of so much life in the last round. I mean, that that Bruce back too, man. That shit is the soul taker, man.
Oh, Rain won that
That
tournament, right?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
he
Tongue
won.
Ball Love in the last game before the reset had a massive life lead with Law in the last round, massive, and just you know, uh, but so Tekken 6 was a good momentum. In Tag 2, it just went down. Then here comes 7. And 7, I think, the original Tekken 7. Well, first it was what was it? Before Tekken 7, what was that one that came out on PS and PlayStation?
Revolution.
Revolution. And I think 7 was built off of that, right?
Yeah, because Revolution had like a little meter. That game was weird. It had to do like you get power ups based off cards and stuff. It was so strange that game, and it was free to play.
But 7 comes out, in the original state of Tekken 7, people weren't happy with a lot of things, right? The online wasn't good. Like, because I'm curious, how did Tekken go from top of the world with Tekken 6 to right in the gutter with Tag 2? Didn't get much better with the original Tekken 7. And by the end of Tekken 7, it was like the biggest love fest I've ever seen between community and developer. To the fact that everybody wanted to try Tekken 8 with the way Tekken 7 ended, right?
Yeah.
And then Tekken 8 came out and it went right back down again. So what happened in 7? Like what happened between the beginning and end of 7? How did it go from this ain't it to this is the best shit ever?
I think the reason though is because the way they made Tekken 8 with the gameplay, like more players wanted something more similar to Tekken 7, but not completely the same, right? Tekken 8 just threw out everything you could learn as a Tekken player. They added chip damage. They added every character had a damn guard break. Some characters had unbreakable throws. The heat mechanic, everybody hates it because the heat mechanic, you basically get like an upgraded version of your character consistently when you in heat, and you don't even need to earn heat. You just do it. You just have it. Right when the match starts.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of things people don't like. Obviously, defend. You can't really play defense too much in Tekken 8. Because of chip damage and everything, and the movement isn't too great. And another thing too, the developers weren't really listening to the player community. The player community was asking for these changes. We wanted better defensive mechanics, just more things to deal with the overwhelming offense, and for them to nerf Heat. But they didn't do it. In season 2, they said fuck what everybody said, and let's just boost up the offense even more. Now when you get hit with a heat engager, we could go into full crouch and do a full crouch mix up on you now. So they gave everybody tracking plus frame homing moves. So they literally did not listen to the community and made the game even more aggressive and worse. And that's the downfall of the game, bro. The developers didn't even listen to anything anybody said, and they promised to make the game more defensive in season 2 and make it feel more like Tekken. But they didn't listen to nobody, man, and everybody got upset and started boycotting Tekken 8. And then Harada ended up leaving Namco. I don't know where it's gonna go from here.
Yeah, I see the fighting game world is kind of and arguing based on, oh, you just want to run around and do this all day. Like, it's almost like they consider defensive players to be cheap. What I've noticed is when a defensive player wins throughout history, it's oftentimes the game's mechanics that get credited more so than the player's defense.
Yeah.
But when the offensive player wins, nobody talks about the game's mechanics. They talk about how skilled the player is.
Yeah.
From the beginning, I can tell you this, from the very beginning of online play, because in the arcade scene, you're playing with people that are going to be playing with you. You know what I'm saying? On the online era, you get the whole world playing you, right? So then you really get to see what people think. When fighting games first went online, the complaint that I heard the most is always about defense. Why don't you come fight me? Is that all you're gonna do? That all you're gonna do is stand there? Why don't you fight me? I mean, it's rare that I would hear somebody say, all you're going to do is mix. You hear that a lot more now, right? But it's standard now. Everybody mixes, right? But in the original online state of fighting games, people constantly complain about defense. And I heard like Sajam say like, oh, you don't understand these old school games. The best option was to do nothing, which is not good. What Sajam doesn't tell you is the reason why those old games in the late 90s, early 2000s, the best option was to do nothing is because if you got hit, the game was over.
Yeah, too much damage.
You had, yeah. So you had to, defensive play became very strong. What I noticed is that so few players, defense is much harder to play than offense because you have to have a good understanding of like with offense, players can understand this is my situation, like Tekken 8. This is my situation, and if I put you in my situation, your only option is to guess.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? So I don't have to know blah 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 blah. I'm either going to guess right or I'm going to guess wrong. Right? So they play their situation. To be a defensive player, you have to know every situation at all times. It's much harder to play defense. Defense is a much harder skill set, and it's rare. Many players today that think they're defensive masters are horrible at playing defense. Absolutely horrible. They think they're defensive players. So when they lose, it's, oh my God, there's no defense, right? Your defense is bad. You're an offensive player who thinks you play defense. Your offense is just bad, so you think because of that you play defense, but you don't play defense either. And that's kind of and if you take like 100 players, 99 of them will be offensive.
Yeah.
Because nobody today, a new player doesn't pick up a fighting game and say, let me practice kind of running away, spacing, and blocking everything. They're like, hey, what are my combos? What's my mix? What's my overheads? What's my lows? That's how players think, right? 99 of 100. So if you took a 100 players and said 99 of them were going to be offensive and one of them was going to be a defensive master, the defensive player wins because they always have more experience, which makes it seem like defense is unfair. So if you have the 100 players, 99 are offensive. So when the offensive player fights another offensive player, that's like everybody, right? So they play 99 of those players or whatever of those players, and it's like they're all playing like me. Offense versus offense, offense versus offense. Then they play the one defensive player and they're like, what is this? Right? Now the defensive player usually wins that because the defensive player has a 99-1 experience edge. Everyone he plays is offensive. I play 99 offensive players every day. You play one defensive player. So I have the experience of fighting 99 different offensive players. So your offensive style, as crazy as you are, whatever, I'm used to that. But the offensive player, all they know is offense versus offense. And then they play this one defensive player and they're like, this is weird. So what do? Defense is too strong. All you want to do is back. When Arslan Ash talked about defense, the reply was, oh, he's just salty that he can't win, blah, blah, blah. Then he goes and wins Evo.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, it's all you want to do is backdash all day. People don't realize how hard it is to play defense. So what oftentimes happened over years is the defensive player had such a true defensive master has an advantage over the offensive player because the defensive player always has the edge in experience. 99 out of 100 people they play are going to be offensive, right? So their defense is so strong. However, when you're doing offense versus offense, it can be kind of crazy, right?
That's basically Tekken 8.
When you're doing offense, yeah, when when you're going offense against a defense. So what they've done is made it harder and harder to be that defensive player. I think all fighting games are going that way. And I think for fighting games to be, if they're ever going to be a true profession, they have to be harder, not easier.
Yeah.
First, if you're going to be a profession, you've got to cultivate a professional player, right? The problem with fighting games is the fans are on the field, not in the stands, right? Because as that video said, it's like sponsors, even for gambling, they like predictability. Sponsors, they want to say it's going to be Knee versus Arslan Ash, 8 p.m. on Sunday. But an open bracket, who's this guy? Pulled an upset, right? And then, you know what I mean? It doesn't happen. So, for one, I think they should stop bridging the gap. Stop trying to make it easy. And I don't know why the FGC is in denial about this. Stop trying to make it easier for players to compete above their level. It's not sour grapes. They are trying to make it easier for players to compete above their level. You need to make fighting games very hard, again, and it will cultivate. You could still have casual players, right? There'll be less. The problem is the interest of the developer and the interest of the player doesn't align. Because the developer, they don't get money by you being a pro player. They get money by selling games. How do we sell games? Allow as many people as humanly possible to feel good about playing them. Now, if that sucks for you, the pro player, not my problem. I'm here to sell games. The pro player wants it as hard as humanly possible,
of course,
for people to play, right? But that doesn't sell games. So fighting games will never really be what they need to be because the interests of the developer and the player are always in conflict. Unfortunately. I really wish that games like Tekken 6 could be playable again. I mean, they made Tekken 3 playable, right?
Yeah, you could play Tekken 3, and some people use some kind of online thing to be able to play like DR online. And I think I played Tekken 6 online with like an emulator, but the online is terrible. And they need to just come out with an official release. I don't know why Namco hasn't done like a 3D collection for Tekken. I think that'll sell really well. I don't know why they haven't done that yet.
How about they never redid like Tekken 6 or anything like that, right? They never.
Nope. They need to come out with a collection, man, similar to like what MK did. But obviously, I would
I
like them
think a
to.
lot of people would like 6, to be honest with you today. I think a lot of people would like it if they could go back and play it. Um, as someone you who've been a tournament veteran for so long, we all know there are those players that we hate fighting in tournament, right? And there's a guy, you know who he is, because he always said GM hates fighting me. Naklam, Mal,
Oh yeah, I
right?
remember him. Yeah, I
His
remember
Roger.
him. Yeah, I remember him. He was
He's
mad
always
cheap.
like, man, yeah. He's always like, yeah, man, GM. He hates some of the random shit that I be doing, man.
Yeah, he's annoying. I think the players I hated the most fighting in tournament was Fab, of course. When he played Bob, I hated that shit. And I hated fighting Homeman, man. I hated fighting that dude.
Whole man, yeah. So talk me about Whole man. Whole man is a name that kind of gets lost in everything because he doesn't have the cachet as Knee
Yeah,
or something like that. Even really, unfortunately, Nin is kind of, since he's been retired. A lot of the newer players don't even know about Nin.
yeah.
People know about Knee and Ars and Ash, etc. Um, Whole man was kind of. I always felt Whole man got nervous in tournaments.
Maybe
I
at
feel, you know
maybe
what I
at
mean?
first, maybe at first, yeah, he got a little nervous. I
At
know.
first,
I think
because Crow got him in the Lars mirror because he got hella stiff
and then
against Crow in the Lars mirror.
I know the finals was him versus Core, and Core ended up beating him at MOG Orlando. I remember that was the
Yeah,
finals.
yeah.
Um, honestly, what I think it
Because
is,
when he would get rattled, he would just get stiff, right, and just stop moving. He was just scared to do anything, you know.
he got randomed out a couple of times, but honestly, from everybody that I've ever played in Tekken, I think he's the best Tekken player I ever played against. Cause
Really.
he's like, I don't like, he's so like, he's the way he plays is weird, man. Like he's like really solid, but he's like random while being solid. I never seen a Korean play like that. Like he's able to switch up his timing on the fly. That's how I learned, like from playing him, like changing your timing mid set. That's a big skill to have. Like you could literally like confuse somebody, because most people in America, like JDCR told me, he was like, Americans' weaknesses is that they focus on trying to mix you up too much. Like just doing 50-50s. Where in Tekken, there's multiple ways to beat somebody, with punishing, sidestep, checking somebody's timing with counter hits. So I learned the whole timing thing from them. But Homeman was the one dude that I learned from. That this dude would switch up his timing on the fly and confuse the hell out of you with his buttons. And he would just beat people just by doing that. He won't even mix you up. He would do that. Especially like defensive timing with fuzzy guarding, sidestep ducking. I never seen somebody do that before him. Like, Knee obviously is one of the greatest in the world. But I always felt like Knee's problem is that he's too defensive. Like, Whole Man was just like, he was like a big masher and he was defensive at the same time. I never seen a player that was like the perfect mix of both like that.
So in some of those older Tekken games, like Tekken 6, I would say you had the most experience against Koreans.
Yeah,
'Cause they were coming over here constantly because of the money, right?
yeah.
Um, what was the difference between like a high level top tier American player and a high level top tier Korean player? Like, what was the difference in like how they played?
Americans focus more on like hard reading and 50-50s a lot. Where if you play a Korean player, he's gonna exploit every single weakness your character has. If your character has a tracking issue, they're gonna exploit the hell out of that. If your character has a range issue, they're gonna exploit the hell out of that with spacing and movement. And also being able to just switch their timing on the fly, man. I remember when I played Knee for the first time, I felt like I couldn't hit this dude. I said, bro, this dude is literally just sidestepping everything I do. And I can't hit him. His defense is too good. And then I started asking questions a little bit more about, how they play and what they do. And they explained to me they do something called delay catch, which is basically they just delay their moves to get your timing off when you sidestep. They told me
Mm-hmm.
about how they were able to switch their timing. Another thing, too, they explained to me how defense works in Korea. Basically what they told me, this is what Rain told me. He told me over there they don't play by reactions. You see how in America we try to react to everything? Koreans, they make educated guesses. So anytime you put them in a 50-50, they literally just guessing. They're not really like, mentally trying to see the move coming. So once I learned that, that's how I was able to fight them. Once I realized that every time I got them blocking something, they're just guessing it. They're not blocking it on reaction. So that's one of the reasons why I was able to beat like Nin and Knee and stuff like that. Once I realized it, it sounds easier said than done, but it's still extremely hard because their movement and spacing is so good. There's not going to be a lot of opportunities you're going to get that you're going to have them just raw guessing like that.
Why do you think the execution over there is just so much more crisp as far as movement and things like that than it is over here in America?
Over here, man, like even if you see it in Tekken 8, like Tekken 8, I don't really practice the game. I kind of just play and I rely on my fundamentals. And I'm able to beat like 80% of the players I play. And the reason why is because everybody now, they can't move, they can't poke. Like nobody has any kind of fundamentals, right? And that's always been an issue with NA. Like the top level NA players could move and backdash cancel. Like Anakin and stuff, like he could backdash cancel, he could space. But most of the American players and like 6 and stuff like that can't move. They can't move or nothing like that. So that's the difference with fighting an international player, the way they play. They do everything that's in the game. They don't play the game 2D. You know what I'm saying? They backdash, they space, they poke properly, they punish everything properly. They know all the frames, they know all the little character weaknesses. So that's the big difference between them, man. Over here, like people just focus on offense. It's not even just a Tekken 8 thing. People always play like that. So, that's what make a top player over here. It's just basically just them just having fundamentals. A lot of people don't have fundamentals, man. A lot of people can't really play.
But fundamentals, that's something that gets lost a lot. Fundamentals in fighting games. I don't think most people even know what those are. You know what I mean? But I like what you said about they focus on so many people in America play games.
Yeah.
Right? And yet overseas they would say, "Oh, your basics, your fundamentals. Your movement, knowing when to sidestep, backdashing in and out, things like that, right? Korean backdash, etc." Why do so many Americans, why did they ignore the basic fundamentals of the game? Like to them, that's nothing. You know what I mean? Like that's just another day. This is just what you do when you play Tekken, right? But in America, that was, like a thing that you rarely saw, like outside of a handful of like the elite of the elite.
Yeah.
Whereas you go to like Green Arcade over there and they all do it.
Yeah.
You went to an elite arcade in America and most of them aren't going to do it. Right. Why? I mean, because people play it at home. They could practice as much as they want. If they wanted to, they could go and practice. It's so funny because people always say, well, it's in the game, you could do it.
Yeah.
But when it comes to like the defensive mechanics and you say, well, it's in the game, you could do it same as them. No, take it out. I feel like that's,
Honestly, man, it's because the game doesn't teach you none of that. To be real with you, the game don't teach you how to backdash cancel or how to poke and space and stuff like that. Even me, man, that I was doing pretty well at the beginning, like in 2009, and when I was started playing Tekken 6, I ended up fighting the Koreans for the first time, and it was like they were playing a different game, man. And everything they taught me, like I told you about delaying their moves, backdashing properly, spacing and all that. In America, I didn't learn any of that because nobody knew about it. Like, you know what I'm saying? So that's why I started asking them questions and they broke everything down. This is a knowledge thing, man. Nobody knew. I didn't know neither till they started telling me. Because usually over here, the basic thing. You put somebody in a 50-50, make them guess. You know what I'm saying? You got some counter hit buttons, use it. That's about it. The meta over here was real simple. Which is like back then, how, we learned about Korean backdashing from Tag 1, the Johnny Ksu dude with the wave dashing and light dashing and stuff like that. So, they just focus way more on the core fundamentals of the game, where over here, we don't really focus on stuff like that. You can see it when you watch people play Tekken 8. They kind of just forget about the fundamentals of Tekken. But that's because in that game, you can still win without the fundamentals of the Tekken because of all the nonsense the game has. But You know, I wish, like you said earlier, they should make fighting games hard again and force you to have to learn the fundamentals of the game to win. It's kind of crazy to me now that in new age fighting games, you could literally have no fundamentals and still place in tournaments and win with no fundamentals whatsoever. Just because when you eat a 50-50, you can eat a 50-50. And no matter how good you are, you're going to lose to that. And apparently, the reason why they made Tekken 8 like that is because people complained so much about Tekken 7, about grand finals of like Arslan Ash and different people always backdashing and playing defensive. And they complained that apparently casuals thought that was really boring to watch. So that's why they made Tekken 8 so in your face like that, to make it more entertaining for viewers to watch. But at the end of the day, they made it, you know, the way the game is, even casuals don't want to play, because a casual doesn't want to just eat a 50-50 all day and not be able to do anything. That's not fun. You so they kind of made it easier for casuals to play, but they made it too easy to the point that they don't want to play, you know? So yeah, that's it with that, man.
I mean, no, I see what you're saying. With the Arslan Ash thing, it's boring. Somebody once told me in Mortal Kombat, for example, an MK player once told me that, like, if I were to watch you lame somebody out and win by 0.01% and the time expire, he said, I would be like, man, such discipline to be like, I don't have to do anything. Most people, they're like, it's close. Let me just try to get that last poke so I can win. To be like, I don't have to do anything. Whatever he does, I'm going to defend against it. Yeah. Right? To have, you know, and it'd be like, wow, what? He said everybody else would say, get that shit off the screen. But if it's two players going punch for punch, people are like, oh shit, that's mad hype. What I found is offense generates hype very early on, but offense is very shallow. And then a year into a game, if there's not a heavy defensive focus as well, it just becomes offense. It's the same thing over and over and over again. People get bored of it.
And every character plays the same pretty much at that point.
Yeah. Every character plays the same at that point. Yeah, it's very, very, very true. It's just so strange to see that because what Arslan Ash was doing was very difficult.
It was, yeah.
You know, and you know, for the, you know, but again, fighting games, again, the interest of the developer is to sell, and the interest of the player is, hey, I want to be a top player. I want to know that I've invested mad time in this. My skill is going to be rewarded, and developers are trying to cut that out as much as humanly possible. So it'd be interesting to see where Tekken goes. I mean, is Tekken too complicated, do you think? And they were like, well, let's simplify it, because
exactly.
Sega did that at one point with Virtua Fighter, right? They thought it was VF4. People thought it was too complex. So I think Sega with 5 was like, hey, let's make it simple. Let's simplify it a little easier, even though it's still Virtua Fighter in a lot of ways. We know Guilty Gear did it with the new Guilty Gear. And I feel like Namco was trying to make Tekken less complex.
Yeah, that's basically what they did with Tekken 8, because people complain too much that Tekken is way too hard to play. That's why so many new people picked up Tekken 8. People complain. That's why they nerfed Oki so much in Tekken 8. Like back then in Tekken 5 and other Tekken games, you back row wrong, you die. You tech row wrong, you die. Now you just hold back and get up. So a lot of people complain about that, about the Oki, that it was too hard to get up. That's why they made get up kick safe in Tekken 8. They complain about throws being too hard to break, so that's why you could just mash the one break to break both of them now. So little things like that, they simplified it. Yeah, regular throws, you could just break them with one button. It's been like that since.
Well, 1 and 2 breaks are just.
Yeah, if you a left throw and a right throw, you could just break it with the same button.
Oh man.
The only things that's like obviously there's some throws that are like specialty throws, like giant swing. You still have to specifically break that with one. But generic throws, you could just mash the same button.
Wow.
So, you know, you don't really need to practice, you know, like back then you actually needed to practice. Okay, this left throw is 1, right hand is 2. Now you could just mash any button. The only thing you have to practice now is the specialty throws, like the special throws, like the Gen 1 that he grabs you and pushes you down, that's a 2 break, or a jack that he throws up in the air and does a combo, that's a 2 break. But just generic throws in general, mash the button.
I think it's never been easier to see the hands. And wow.
Yeah, so they scrubified the game a lot, man. The game is they made everything easier. Like with Law, you know, to do DSS, you just press forward now, right?
What?
Yeah, they simplified DSS with
It's
law. Yeah, you just press forward and he instantly goes into it. Like they simplified everything, man.
they thought back forward was too hard.
Yeah, I guess so. They made that easier to do. What else they made easy? There's a lot of
Wow.
stuff, man. Like instant running is not even instant running no more. You just press forward 3 times, and you could do instant running without doing instant running.
So instant while running, they simplified that as well.
Yeah, you could just like with Dragonoff, you just press forward 3 times too. You know, so anybody could do instant running now. Well, it's not really instant running no more,
Wow.
but so it's a lot of the skill. That's why I tell you in Tekken 8, a lot of the skill that you learn as a Tekken player
You used to
throughout the
have to
years.
time the three forwards. You used to have to do the forward, and then time the third forward to get the instant while running.
Yeah,
Now it's just blah blah blah.
yeah. So they simplify everything. That's why I say that's the issue with Tekken 8. Like legacy knowledge is cool, but you really don't like. Besides just knowing a couple of strings, anything you learned back then, you gotta throw that shit down the toilet, man. The only thing that'll carry you now is fundamentals, so you can still bot people because being able to backdash and poke and knowing how to space. But at the end of the day, you don't really need it. Everything you learn, that shit don't matter in Tekken 8. So that's my issue. I wanted to ask you one more thing, right, before we end this, right?
Sure.
I always wondered what made you get into Mortal Kombat, because when I've heard about you, you was a DOA and a Tekken guy. So you getting into MK and becoming the big MK player that you are, like I was shocked by it. I was like, yo, how did Tom get into MK?
So my first fighting game ever was Street Fighter 2 World Warrior. Um, and I'm lame. I played Guile, but I didn't even realize I was lame at the time. I'm in the arcade, and back then they would have the commands of the characters. So I never played on the stick. It's Street Fighter 2 World Warrior. So I'm looking at the commands, and I'm like, forward, down, down, forward. I can't do that. Guy was like, oh, back, forward, and down, up. I could do that. And I got into that, and Guile just being a defensive character in general, I guess I was just a lame player. Uh, I got into that, and then Champion Edition. Mortal Kombat I got into because back then, when people knew who you were in the arcade, again, everything was so smaller back then.
Yeah.
Everybody knew who everybody was. So the top players at that arcade, the people that work there know who the top players are. Like you would get free tokens sometimes or whatever. You know what I'm saying? That's why I love arcades with tokens. They wouldn't give you quarters, but they'll give you tokens. Um, and they were like, "Yeah, we got this new game coming in, Mortal Kombat or whatever." And I honestly think we got it immediately upon release, probably the first week um, of its actual nationwide release. And I got into it because it was something so different from everything that was in the arcade. So I got into it in MK1 because back then every game looked very similar. They were all copying that Street Fighter model. Even SNK, the Japanese 2D games have that similar combo system. You know what I mean? Especially back then. And you had Ken and Ryu, and every other game had their Ken and Ryu-like characters. You know what I'm saying? And then there's Mortal Kombat. Scorpion and Sub-Zero were not like Ken and Ryu, where they're identical. They were different. And MK just grabbed you because then there was, for whatever the reason, the characters were interesting. Juggles were you didn't see juggles at all. And then here's Mortal Kombat that had these juggles. And I really got into the characters, really got into the story. And I played Sub-Zero right away in that game. And he was my favorite character right from the beginning. And as I became more competitive, I played every character. I played Cage, Sonya, etc. And I really got into Mortal Kombat that way. And MK arcade games, even in New York, it was a big Street Fighter area, but the arcades weren't like packed in like 91, 92. And even Mortal Kombat 1, they weren't really packed. And then something weird happened. Then they had these, I know on the West Coast, there were plenty of people that were playing. Then it was only a handful of arcades in New York that were packed. They weren't even packed, but they had a good amount of players. But then the Senate hearings on video game violence happened, and Mortal Kombat was all over it. And then people started going to the arcade because you got this fighting game that's on the 6 o'clock news every night around the country.
Yeah.
I mean, it was free exposure. You know, the fatalities. You know, people act like, oh, the casuals, they love the fatalities. Dog, these casuals go on YouTube or whatever video things, and they watch people getting ran over by trains in real life. I promise you, they play Call of Duty, they blow someone's head off in 4K.
Yeah.
The fatalities are not like, oh, look, did you see that? But it got Mortal Kombat recognized for video game violence, right?
Yeah.
At the time. And what happened was when people went to the arcade to see this Mortal Kombat, because it was out on Sega Genesis, Super Nintendo, and they went to the arcade to play this Mortal Kombat game. Mortal Kombat 2 had just come out. So they go there to find this Mortal Kombat game, and then here comes MK2. It's already out. And the arcades, the biggest fighting game in arcades was Mortal Kombat 2, nationwide. Street Fighter was huge in its areas, but Mortal Kombat, even though Street Fighter is worldwide, Mortal Kombat, even a bad Mortal Kombat game beats it in sales. Mortal Kombat just, you know, MK2 had more people than Street Fighter. And that's how I really got into Mortal Kombat. And Mortal Kombat was really my first game that I took seriously. And in the arcade era, and you know this, you learn how to play everything because when arcade is mad packed and you lose, you're waiting like 45 minutes.
Yeah, you waiting mad long, yeah.
Yeah, so you learn how to play other games. So, like, I didn't really get into Tekken 1. It was like, whatever. But then when Killer Instinct came out, I got into Killer Instinct. And that's how I found out about Saber over in Arizona. It's so mad weird how, like, across the country we'd hear about each other. And I remember there was a big thing that we were talking about how he went to California, SHGL, and beat Mr. Wizard. And Mr. Wizard never put the videos up in KI1. And it's so weird how we would hear about each other across the country from each other. But that's how I got into Mortal Kombat. And Mortal Kombat was always my favorite game. And I played it in MK1, MK2. I didn't really touch Street Fighter after like I got into Mortal Kombat. Didn't really play like Street Fighter 3 at all. Did play KI1 and KI2. There was like in the KI2 days, there was like a tournament at every arcade. You know, like, I mean, like every arcade you would go to would have a tournament night. And I got into MK that way, and I loved it. Even like UMK3, when people, you know, MK4 for me was my favorite in the arcade because, you know, guys like James MK, he's 55, I'm 48, so he's, you know, when I was 15 years old, he was in his 20s. You know, he's out there traveling, beating people down, etc. Me, I'm 15. I can't travel like that. You know, of course, in my mind, I want to say I was mad nice, but I guess I wasn't a name to beat. Anyone that played me would know I was good, but I wasn't one of the names to beat. You know, in MK2, I had to hear about Dream TR, you know, Shirts, Master John, people like that. And even though I was considered a good player, you know, and like from like the New Jersey area on down a little bit south, the arcades I went to, I couldn't travel but so much. And even in 3, you had like Chicago. So 3 was not received as well as people think. But the Chicago area had mad people, the game testers, because they had WaveNet from regular MK3 on. Yeah. And you hear about the Chicago people. You know, like, I wasn't like, you know, people only knew me in my locale. But MK4, you had like websites popping up. I was older now. I was traveling around. Now I was the man, and everybody knew it. So for me, I liked it because it was my time. You know what I'm saying? To where, even though I was always good at the other ones, I was not, as somebody would call it, a name to beat. You know what I mean? Like, if you weren't local, people wouldn't know who I was outside of my local areas, you know, a couple of states. Whereas, like, everyone knew Dream TR nationwide, Master John, everyone knew James MK, everybody knew Lex, people like that. Everyone knew these guys. 4, it was like my time. So I really got into 4. And like in between then, like I played so many things like DOA. I love DOA. I did Virtua Fighter. 1 and 2, Tekken 1 and 2 were kind of like whatever, right? They were never
Yeah.
serious games. Like Tekken 3 really changed. People don't realize how Tekken 3 changed everything
Yeah, that was the
for
first
3D
serious one.
games.
Yeah.
And the difference between other 3D games and Tekken 3 is massive, massive. DOA 1 came out, and I remembered it was uh, being advertised. I didn't find out later on until why. Like they put a lot of advertising in it and trying to make it more simple. I played a lot of DOA 1. I thought it was fun. DOA 2, when it was coming out for Dreamcast, a lot of arcades, even in Virginia, had it. And I traveled a lot for DOA 2. I've been up into Canada, Texas, a lot of places I traveled for DOA 2 arcade. Loved DOA 2. And then they had DOA Millennium Edition, etc. And then on the Dreamcast, we got it. And then we got DOA 2 LE for, because you could soft mod your Dreamcast and then on a DOA Hardcore. So I was always into Mortal Kombat, but Mortal Kombat went through a weird period of the arcade scene is done. What are you going to play in like end of 99, 2000, 2001, most of 2002? You got 4 years. There's no Mortal Kombat. So I played DOA, DOA 2, learned Tekken Tag. I was, for fun. I was not a good player. And then Tekken 4, and then MK Deadly Alliance came out, and I got back into Mortal Kombat. I've always been on and off with Mortal Kombat because once you get into tournaments, like you love it. You know what I'm saying? Like you live to compete. You want to go to tournaments, and there was just no tournaments. There was Deadly Alliance, but it didn't have its own thing. It was piggybacking off of Tekken and Soul Calibur, and you were just playing those Tekken and Soul Calibur players. And when, I mean, FGC is not a family anymore like it used to. Like Mick, we miss him. Mick was part of the family, part of the goons. And like me, Jop, Eddie Pistons, Mick, RTD, you were all close friends. Top players used to have a real bond. Now it's kind of mad weird, right?
Yeah.
Like back then, top players, when you were like the elite of the elite, like, man, you're in like a special club and we were all together, right? And of course, we still wanted to beat each other, but like there was a level of respect. Even if you wanted to beat the dude to prove you were better, like it was different than it is today. Now it's like every man for himself. Those bonds aren't there anymore.
Yeah.
But in Mortal Kombat, I came back in MKDC because of Rio. Rio having someone to play with that was beating everybody and was being mad cheap. I was like, man, this is somebody that's, I need to learn how to beat this. And then in MK9, I came, during Tekken 6, played a lot of MKDC. Started playing Tekken 6 like the last year and a half, but it was kind of on and off again. DOA 4 played a lot of that as well. Top 8 at Evo. Soul Calibur 4 played that as well, but Soul Calibur 4 was mad weird because they couldn't decide what the rules were. First Algol's banned, now he's not. Yoda's banned, now he's not. And it's like
I remember that.
It was mad weird, man. I got into Mortal Kombat from the very beginning. I've always loved Mortal Kombat. I've always loved it. Mortal Kombat, unfortunately, has just not been able to. It's so weird that it's got a name so big, right? Probably bigger than no other fighting game could make a movie and make money besides Mortal Kombat. I mean, no other. Like people. I've never seen a game that people want to love so much, and they play it and they say, can't get into it, which is so weird because people try to force themselves into it. Even when MK9 came out, right? Like you had Aris playing it, Valle playing it, Tokido at a tournament played it. So many people PR Balrog, Flo, rest in peace. Justin Wong, L.I. Joe, like people love it, and to see it, I don't know, to see where it is kind of like heartbreaking. I don't think MK will ever I don't think it'll be returned for a long time. But that's how I got into MK from the very beginning, from the arcade.
Damn, man, thank you for this long interview, man. You pretty much told so many stories about so many things that I don't think anybody knew about. Because a lot of these people, they be wanting to know about old school FGC, but there's not really a lot of people around left to really tell people about, you know, how it was back then and how these games were. So I appreciate your time, brother.
Oh, no worries at all. Thanks for having me, GM. I appreciate you, man.
No problem, man. Take it easy, everybody.
Later. Take it easy, guys.
Let me let me